build a business by design instead of default. And your lifestyle also gets upgraded because of it. Welcome to the Moms Makin Dough Podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt, and today's episode is coming to you fresh off of some of my earlier coaching calls with one-on-one clients this morning. I'm in that shift of time as a mom where my daughter, who's 4, just finished preschool. So she graduated last week, and I am starting to figure out. Of course, I've thought about this ahead of time, what my schedule looks like going forward for the summer with some shifts of different times with having her home and camps and just that transition. So, I thought about it today that the best way that I could get my podcast done is if I blocked off one of my normal call slots to get this done. And you know what? I was like, man, I haven't tried this before. And I'm so excited because I'm hot off like some of the things that came up with some of my clients today. So I want to start this episode. I'm calling it, Are You Building a Business and a Life by Design or Default? And as cliche as that may sound to some of you, it is one thing that I find myself coming back to, not only for myself personally, but with my clients time and time again. So I was like, this is the episode that is calling you to speak it out today. So I'm interested to see what comes out of it because I have a very loose outline. It's going to be very organic, where I'm going to talk you through some of the things, like I said, that came up with clients this morning. And one of the first things that I wanted to talk about is I worked with a client that she has worked with me for over a year now. She's one of my favorite clients to coach. She is always just so open and coachable. And the funny thing is that she started out as a very tactical and strategic type client where she wanted very strategic and tactical type advice for her business. And in the last year, we have really grown not only her business and her offerings, but she has just really shifted and evolved as a business owner. And it's now going into an even bigger shift with some of the things. And she just came off of when we started working together last year, it was just after her birthday. And she had kind of was in this place where she really thought that because it was her birthday, it was shifting her to really think about what her purpose and what the direction of her business was taking. And I find that like that does happen around a lot for a lot of people. That timing unconsciously does really make you start to kind of question, like, hey, am I on purpose? Am I doing the right things with my time? Am I building the business the way that I want to? And it was so interesting because for the first time today, we were revisiting how she felt when we first started working together. And I wrote down some of the adjectives that she talked about. And one of them was she kept saying, she's like, at this time last year, before we started working together, I felt strained, stressed, and stuck, which I think those are the 3 S's. I'm going to have a lot of alliteration. I love alliteration in today's episode. Strained, stressed, and stuck that I typically find when I do a first call with like a new customer or prospective customer for me. And I think about even last week doing some discovery calls with new clients that 2 found me online, 1 was referred to me, is that this was the common scenario. And obviously I ask a bunch of questions to find out like where are they in their business. And a lot of times when I start the questions, we focus on the facts, like what's the actual facts of their business. But then we start to transition into more of the feelings behind the facts because they're always attached, especially I find when you are a female entrepreneur. So when we were talking about stress, strained, and stuck, and we were starting to track back the patterns of some of the things that were creating those, because as she goes into the next phase, next evolution of her business, there are going to be times when stress, strained, and stuck um, And also, I guess I should add the fourth word that I love to use is shifts are starting to happen. And typically, like when people hear the word shift, I have a very positive response to the word shift. But some people are like, oh man, that they get a little bit more constricted when they think about that word. So those are four S's: strained, stressed, stuck, stagnant, maybe would be another one. And then this is going to be five S's, I guess, shift. And when I think about those, where our conversation started today, like I said, she had her birthday. And one of the things that we had been really working on with her was setting fun targets, something to look forward to in our business. Because I find that this is something women entrepreneurs, especially if you are moms, you go through stages of your business just like you would go through stages of motherhood. So there's like the infancy stage when you're in the startup stage. There's the toddler phase where like, you get some growth, but there's also a lot of tantrums and a lot of transition that usually happens in those first toddler years. And then you go into like kind of those elementary school years. And then you go into, I like to look at elementary as like when you're kind of starting to scale your business. You're hiring some of your first employees usually. And if we look at it, oh man, this is good. This metaphor. I've not used this, but we kind of touched on this today. And then we look at from elementary school, you're going into the middle school age. And then you're going from middle school to the teenage age, right? Like you never stop being a parent once you become a parent. There's just a different new level, new devil, which is the same thing in your business. So I guess the first question I would ask again on this organic recording is like, what stage of your business are you in? Are you in infancy? Are you in the toddler stage? Are you in the elementary? Are you in middle school? Or are you in, oh man, the most dreaded one, I think, for a lot of people, which is the teenage years, right? So, um, just really starting to think of like, you might not be in the same stage of your business that you are in actually in your motherhood. So when it comes to moms making dough, you might be in two different stages. Right now, I'm in the toddler stage, and in my actual like motherhood journey, but then in my business journey, I have one that's, I would say, more the teenage age, and then I have one that is more the infancy stage, like my coaching and consulting. Even though I've been doing it for a couple years now, I look at it as it's still in infancy, in terms of the time I have to allow to do it, and I'm starting to really grow from the infancy into the toddler stage, with the coaching and the consulting part. And even my creating content. Like this is a couple months in, with the podcast. I'm having so much fun with this. And but it's the first time that I've done something where I'm consistently creating content for people to utilize. So it is more of an infancy stage of my business in that capacity. And so when I was talking with this first client I'm talking about today, and we were talking about that stressed, strained, and stuck that she was in. And we were talking about how like she's starting to shift into the next level. And that means that those feelings could come back. But the difference is now not only do we have awareness around them, but we have different coping mechanisms for even our business. And this is where we started to go back into a conversation, like I said, that I revisit commonly with clients. And I wanted to touch on as today's episode is, are you building a business and a life by default? Because here's what I find. Most people, when they hire me as a business coach, they have a specific thing that they are looking to do. And they also don't really realize on how it's impacting them, or what I call cascading across other areas of their life. So if we look at the main domains of our lives, our relationships, our finances, our health, and then what I call our being, our spiritual connection, not only with ourselves, but with whatever higher power you believe in, or even whatever methods you use to feel a spiritual and purposeful connection. Um, those are the kind of really four domains that we look at when we're looking at like where our life is. And under finance is also usually our business. And our business is typically like when I set targets, I always say I set financial goals, but I also set business targets. And those business targets are in that category, even though they have their own separate targets. And I always like to say one of my favorite sayings, one of my coaches and mentors really impressed upon me was that every business challenge is actually a being challenge. So it's an identity crisis. It's a limiting belief. It's a event or experience that I have not turned into a good purpose or learned that lesson from that I need to obviously at times keep repeating until I do, which we all have that in common. But I talked with her about there's two different types of coaches in my opinion. And this is always like behind what's my purpose, right? And you can have hire a tactical coach, right? So you can hire tactical things like how to do digital marketing ads, how to invest in real estate, where it has a very tactical thing that you're looking for a very desired specific result. The coaching that I like to do, which while I can do a lot of that tactical in a lot of different areas of business, because I'm very passionate about that, is also the other side of tactical coaching is the coaching that really I find that I gravitate and I like to hone in on, which is transformational coaching. Because there's a difference between transformational and tactical. And like I said, there are people that can cross over into both. But here's what I find. If you don't lead with transformation and have someone that's helping you evolve your transformation in your business, then here's what's going to happen. You're going to hire 15 tactical different coaches. You're going to buy 15 different training programs because one of your beliefs when you are looking to hire tactical specifically is usually that you don't know enough to get started or to do some sort of part of whatever the process is that you're looking to get better at. And reality is that I can give people a tactical list for their finances. I can give people a tactical list for their business. But if they do not have the actual mindset shift and transformation that they need to actually take action on those tactical things, they will never do that any of those actions, no matter how amazing your strategy is, your tactical is if they don't address the root cause and actually start to do things and create habits and behaviors that lead to actual a mindset or what I call a soul shift that puts them on purpose in their business. So, just really starting to identify and I was telling her that like what a huge compliment it was to me today that she was like, look at you as my business therapist, so I'm just going to download on you today," which is how I love most of my calls do start, right? We do a process called fired up and fucked up. And fired up is we talk about some of the wins we've had in the last since the last time we talked, and then we talked about the things that we fucked up or we need help with. And I also do have content that we go through based on what level of they are in their business. But where I wanted to go with this episode today, which is a very long-winded description, sorry, was this is we celebrated that she just had, like I said, completed her first year of having me as her transformational business coach. And she was saying about how she feels like and I was saying that I feel like kind of like for a lot of my clients, I'm glue. Like I am glue that helps them put all the different pieces of their business together and not specifically, yes, like I said, we focus on certain tactical things, but I like to look at my coaching. The coaching type of coaching I like to do is what I call catalyst for change coaching, meaning I'm going to implant the right questions, the questions that will get you thinking and bring you to your own answers of what you need to do to shift whatever it is in your life. And the cascade effect is the things that you get to start to see when you start making shifts in leading towards that transformation and they cascade across every domain of your life, your business, your balance, your being, and also your body, your health. So, because we know that if we start to make shifts in one area of our life, that we will start to make shifts and habits, usually in the positive direction, in others. And, so she was sharing about how we caught up by just saying, like, "How was your birthday?" All that kind of stuff. And one of the things that was really exciting is that I had really encouraged her to take some time out of her business because especially your first couple years of business, it is really hard to justify taking time away, I find. And this is where the concept of the designing a business by design instead of default came through again in our first kind of catch up period. And, oh my god, I was so excited for her because, not only did she book and take me up on, like, really taking some time away and celebrating how far she came, which was, hard for her. It was hard for her to justify at this stage, and she also committed to a trip where she went by herself, and she committed to, like, a VIP trip, meaning, like, she up leveled the type of vacation she would really rather take. And, have I'm sure many of you have heard this saying is that, one I don't know who says it, but a, mind once expanded can never contract to its original size. And we talked about how this is what it means when you start to build a business by design instead of default, and your lifestyle also gets upgraded because of it. Because she was like, this trip was so amazing in terms of the level that she played at, that now it's the new standard. And now this is the only way she wants to travel is at this VIP level. And I was so excited to hear this, not only because she had a great trip, but she came back and she was able to reflect on not only how far she had come because she had come out of her environment and was able to look at the big picture. But it also, like I said, starts to set the vision for what is going to be the level that she wants to go to next. And then it gives us the opportunity to start to design her business instead of letting it just create itself by default and design her business where it's like I said, what would be ridiculous to you right now based on that vacation she just had? She said, well, to have that vacation once a quarter. And maybe or she's like and it might not even be a vacation, it might be a staycation right now, but just, like, be able to have the freedom to take a week off a quarter and not worry about my business that it would start to contract or, that there would be problems while I was gone, or I would have clients I would have to help while I was on vacation. And I was sharing with her, I remember those first couple years of practice with my husband. Actually, I shouldn't say the first couple years. If I'm really being honest, the first 10 years of our practice, even when we had associates working for us, doctors that could cover for us, um, I remember I used to bite off all my nails going to vacation week because not only would vacation week for both Ryan and I going the week before would be very, very hectic, and the week coming returning would be really, really hectic. And the in between, not only before we had associates, we would have to close our office. So we would be paying for a vacation and at that point, I literally called it pay for a vacation, and we'd also be paying because we wouldn't be able to have our office open and operating because we weren't scaled. We didn't have a team at that point. I would say that's probably really about the first 5 years of our practice. Then from year 5 to 10, we did have a team and we started to scale, and, you learn a lot of lessons of scaling the wrong way, or the hard way, I should say in terms of like how you structure your practice, that sort of thing. We had a lot of different learning lessons. Biggest learning lessons are always going to be from employees if you have employees or when you have employees in your business, in my opinion. And then I also, we made a lot of mistakes or and I still we would go, finally started traveling and it got a little bit less until just even I talked about this, I think, last time on the last episode, is that we just went for a trip to Spain, 5 days in Spain. And it was for our office manager, Evelyn, her daughter's wedding. And that was the first trip where I can tell you I was able to drop in and relax on a whole new level which was so bizarre to me because it was the first time that I'd ever traveled that far from my daughter. She was at home with my father-in-law, that was his first time taking care of her. But one of the things that was so crazy is that we were there and there were a couple things that Ryan, my husband, had to just like tend to and check in on. But here we are with my office manager, who is basically the rock of our office behind the scenes, our lead practitioner being Ryan, my husband, and we left our office with our other staff at home, and it was such smooth sailing. It was almost like we didn't want to talk about it because it was so smooth. And there was not a I left the office with I still do all of our financial stuff behind the scenes, and I had really got ahead for the first time ever behind this vacation before this vacation in Spain of, like, what are, things that I where I got to a point where I didn't need to worry about anything because there was nothing might need to do. This was the first trip that I felt like I brought my laptop, but I did not open it one time until we were on the plane home, in which I only prepped for the week in return on the trip home, which is an 8-hour trip. And of that 8 hours, like I said, I think I was on the computer for 6. And that was me just prepping for the week of our return. So the reason that I share this part is so, so critical is because it was the wake up call that showed me, man, the effort I have been putting in on designing our business by on creating our business by design instead of default, which it was for the first 5 to even 10 years of our practice. Now we're 15 years in. And I would just, like I said, be a nervous wreck when it came to a vacation. And then talking to my client this morning about how amazing it was for her, the prep she did before she went. Returning was a little bit hectic. It always is, no matter how you slice it, but how she felt so empowered that this possible vision of her having a week off a quarter not only was it possible, but it also was super exciting for her. And it's making her want to be even better on about how she spends her time in her business when she's working on it, how she's spending her time with clients, the boundaries she's setting out about as she starts to grow her business. And it made me just want to get on and talk about this for today's episode because there are not many people that will take time outside of their business. Let me put it this way. Everybody, myself included, goes home and their business, when you own a business, it's still on your mind. You're still thinking about work. It is so hard to learn to turn that off. And It's a skill. It's a skill like anything. It's like learning how to meditate or learning how to work out or whatever that you have to practice often. And the what I wanted to talk about on the design default, when I originally thought about using this as a topic, was we are getting pretty close to the end of second quarter. We're a couple weeks into June at this point, and we're at the end of second quarter. We're at halftime, people. And the reason I brought this up is because I was like, what are some of the shifts that I really need to make to continue this momentum and growth of setting targets on a quarterly basis, which really make a huge difference, but setting targets that stretch me. And I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable in this share here too. Again, no intention of sharing this, but feeling super compelled to do so is that I thought about how even this weekend, a house came up on the market, and we are like in this stage of looking at houses where I'm like, I kind of still look, but I have really no like, unless it's a hell yes, I'm not going to go take a look because I'm not going to make something work, especially in this really still very low inventory market that we're currently in Massachusetts. And so one of the things that came up was there was a property that I literally checked off almost every box, with one exception, the price. So it was basically double than I would like to spend. And Ryan, my husband, I showed it to him. I was like, check this out. Like, this is my dream house. I showed it to him and he's like, you should go look at it. And in this moment, I just said, "Well, why would I look at that? I don't have that money. We don't have that money to spend. And even if we did, I don't know if I would." And he checked me so hard right here. He was like, "What did you just say?" He's like, "That sounds very scarcity driven." And I thought about this. I actually did some journaling about this morning about how I actually do need to call and go see this property because it's going to start to paint the vision on me reverse engineering what has to happen for me to get into that dream property. Because reality is the dream property I want is only going to be bought with this level of like at this price based on the market I'm in. If it was in another market, it might be a totally different story. But in our market, this is what it costs to have this level of um, house that I want. So, and that's not saying that I'm not grateful for what I had, but then when my coaching call this morning, specifically about the one about the vacation, I really thought about how like here it is this is what building a business and a life by design, not default, requires. It requires you to stretch in that vision for what you have for your business. It requires you to stretch in that vision for what you want your life to look like. Maybe in 3 months from now, maybe in a year from now, maybe in 3 years from now, maybe in 5 years, or perhaps even 10. I find a lot of people, myself included, we struggle with that 10-year vision, but it happens so quick. So, even if you think about, like, your kids, like, how fast time with your kids goes. Like, my daughter's gonna be 5 in October, and I'm just like, "Holy shit, how is that even possible?" So, time starts to even move faster, I feel like, as you start to get older. And I am starting to think about I'm gonna be 44 years old, and I'm like, "Holy shit, what do I want this next 10 years to look like? Because where do I want to be in 10 years from now?" And man, that is not saying I'm not really appreciative of where I am right now, but that's the level of thinking and visualization and manifestation that needs to happen for you to start to get out of stressed, strained, stuck, and stagnant and start to shift to the next level. And it all starts with the actual mindset and what I call, like I said, the soul shift of like, hey, what do I want the next decade of my life to have behind, like, for not only for a purpose, but like, what does that vision look like? And so, my commitment to myself is to make an appointment to go see this $2+ million house that I want to go look at, and even though I'm not in that playing field right now, like that's not that in my reality that I don't know how I would do that. But then I start to put out there that maybe that is coming to me for me to start to step forward towards that vision. And that doesn't mean jump, that doesn't mean leap, that doesn't mean race. That means taking the first step, which might be just planting the seed of the vision. So the same goes when it comes to designing your business and not letting it design itself by default. Like I said, most people do the first 5, even 10 years, like I did, of our practices. And then we started adding other businesses. Now we have multiple different businesses that we are growing. Ryan's growing one on his own. I'm growing one on my own. We have multiple together. So we have a lot of irons in the fire. And it just was the reminder, like I said, this call today, of that sometimes you need to stretch to see that vision and put yourself in that vision so that you can start to feel not only see the vision, especially if you're very visual, but to start to feel the emotions and start to reverse engineer what would have to happen for you to shift into that. And one of my mentors today, oh my God, I was on another coaching call with one of my coaches, and she asked this. We got into this conversation about end of quarter. And what she put forward is the same question I'm going to put forward for all of my listeners. And that is this. She asked us, what is going to happen if you continue to hide this summer? And she was talking about, like, what do you want to see that you would be so excited to happen by the end of the summer? Because guess what? End of summer is around the corner. It's going to happen faster than we know it. We are going to be into Q3, and then Q3 will be done, and we'll be going into the end of the year. And so she asked that question of, like, what is going to happen if I continue to hide the summer? Because she was talking about to some of us about how, like, we're not putting ourselves out there. And so my question is, what's going to happen if you continue to not step in or create a vision of the next 3 months of your business? Even if that sounds scary based on where you're finishing right now or where you are at right now, even if you are in that strained or stuck or just like area where you just know that you're stressed. Maybe it's your finances in your business. Maybe it's your marketing. You're not getting enough leads in. What is the one area that you could start to focus on that you need a bigger and better vision, even though you feel stuck in it right now? And when she asked me this question, what is going to happen if you continue to hide this summer? I was very forthright with her of that. Like, I knew exactly what I needed to be doing. And part of it was staying committed to creating content on a consistent basis, even when I don't have as a consistent schedule. Because, like I said, my daughter's not in school anymore. So I need to juggle childcare and camps and all of the household responsibilities on top of all of my business responsibilities, on top of also wanting to grow and evolve as not only a business owner and coach, but as a person. And, so when you look at it, that laundry list, you start to figure out, like, what do I need to eliminate instead of what do I need to add? So I want you to start to really just ask yourself these questions today is like, hey, where do I need to focus and really start to paint the picture of a possibility for the future? And just get into this space of what it looks like. And maybe like me, like I'm going to go look at that $2 million property, $2.5 million property, um, just to stretch myself, to stretch my vision. Because if I don't, and I go back to what I said to Ryan, which is like, why would I do that to myself? That's only gonna allow me to stay stuck and stagnant and stressed because I'm not where I want to be next. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong where I want to be, but there has to be some give in us female entrepreneurs getting really comfortable with being where we're at, but also pushing the envelope forward on a vision of where we would want to go next. Just like my client this morning is like, I'm never doing a non VIP week vacation again. Like she wants the luxury experience from here on out. So it is setting a new standard. So where in your business do you need to set a new standard? Is it in your sales? Is it in your marketing? Is it in your profit? Is it in your systems? Where do you need to take the next step forward on a bigger vision? That's the first step, in my opinion, of designing a business or creating a business, I should say, by design instead of default. So I hope you found this episode super helpful, even if it just gets you thinking, and most of all, not even thinking, dreaming and visualizing what that next level looks for you in your business. That will start to give you some of the momentum that will allow you to start to reverse engineer what has to happen next for you to start to step into that vision. Or you can stay stuck, stagnant, stressed, and avoid the shift that is going to happen regardless of if you plan it or not. Right. So just really thinking, honing in, what is that next vision? So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please remember that it grows by rate, reviewing, and subscribing, and share this with someone else that might just need to hear this message today. Just like I needed to hear one of my coaches say that to me is like, where do you want to be by the end of this summer? What would be amazing if it was true for you? And just get into that mode as we go into kids out of school and not to let your vision just get pushed by the wayside when you have additional responsibilities added to your plate. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Moms Making Dough.